girl, you the best. And she love me when I'm in it, and she never be pretending. Nothing that's friend. She gon' tell you what she bought it, cause she know you can't afford it. Know you can get it, looking exquisite, no competition. Stay on the pivot. Who be watching, they be plotting. She so motherfucking independent. Mama be big, got on her grind. She had to get out her mama house. Daddy be tripping, now she be whipping. Ain't no more no granny couch.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Eastpod. I'm your host, Camille Cower, and I cannot wait for you guys to meet my guest today. He is the man. He has worked in the film industry for over 50 years, but before that, he was a member of the Student Nonviolent, coordinating committee. He helped us all get the right to vote down here in the South, and I just really can't wait for you guys to meet him. He's also my father, so of course, I am very biased on everything he says because I consider it to be the gospel, the truth, and something that everybody needs to listen to because he's just one of those people that when you hear his stories, you realize how far we've come and how far we still have to go. But it's nothing I take for granted. So I cannot wait for you guys to meet Mr. Dwight Williams. And he's coming in the building. Hold on. We're bringing him on in. Ah, there he is, Mr. Dwight Williams. I need to get like applause, some sound effects. I am so happy to have you here today.
How you doing?
Welcome to my show.
I'm okay. I'm okay. Is everything wonderful in North Carolina?
Everything's good. We actually we had tornado issues earlier, but now everything is great. The weather's great. Looks good outside, although we're kind of stuck inside for now. How's everything for you in LA?
Beautiful day out here, so I'm okay.
Yeah. Well, I can't
Here and
wait.
in here.
I'm sorry.
It's out here and in here. Yes.
Yeah.
In here, out here.
Yeah,
Yes.
right. Well, I can't wait to share everything that you've accomplished because you've really done so much. And I think it's best to start, obviously, in the very beginning because of what all the work you did with SNCC as well as just being involved in civil rights. So, what made you go from going to school at Temple University and traveling down to the South to help with the whole civil rights and getting people out to vote?
Well, truth be told, I was in Philadelphia and I was involved with a group called the Congress of Racial Equality, CORE. And
Okay.
so we were doing issues about urban education, trying to improve the schools, rent strikes, trying to improve the housing, get rid of the slumlords. Um, and then with CORE, they started integrating restaurants to Maryland, and restaurants in the Philadelphia area was still segregated or gave black people hard times. And I became aware of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, what they were doing in the South. So I was in Temple for 2 years, and I dropped out and went down to join SNCC, which is the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. They call it SNCC. Um, and that was in the 65. Summer of 64, I wanted to go down, but I had a motorcycle accident, so I was laid up part of the summer. Then I just couldn't afford to go down at the end of the summer. So I went down in 65 and I stayed there for 2 years. And I worked in Georgia, Arkansas, parts of Alabama, parts of Mississippi briefly. But it was just, I think a lot of young people, particularly a lot of black people, realized that we had a certain kind of skills that would be helpful to our folks who were kind of like basically still semi-enslaved in the South, because segregation was pretty rigid. It was practiced in the North, but in the South it was codified. I mean, it was, you didn't cross these streets, you didn't work in these areas, you couldn't get these jobs, and you definitely couldn't vote.
Right.
And while I was in the South, one of the things that became a lot of people like, okay, well, what's this whole voting thing? What's important to? You could always tell in the South we need a black community. All you had to do was look down. The streets weren't paved. The roads weren't paved. The sewers were open. In the summertime, you were getting mosquitoes. White neighborhood, they sprayed for mosquitoes. The roads were paved. They had sidewalks. They had curbs. They had stoplights. They had traffic signs. So you could just right away tell where the tax money was spent.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we would do things like make up comic books and just little things explain to people what the city money went, the county money, the state. You're paying taxes, but you're not getting the services. The cops can treat you any way they want because they don't have to answer to you for their pension.
Right.
The mayor doesn't have to come over your side of town. The city councilman. So it became, and also we would periodically on the weekends, we would show movies that were about black people or black themed on the sides of buildings, on the sides of a truck. We'd have these like kind of outdoor rallies at night. And I became realize how movies became so important to capture people's imagination, capture their attention, kind of transport you to the world, but also maybe showed you like the possibilities. So movies like Nothing But a Man and things like that really, spoke to black empowerment or just the manhood or the aspirations of we as a people.
Right.
And I decided I wanted to go back when I went back to college, back and learn how to make these movies and hopefully learn how to turn them out for our community and do something that would hopefully be further, not just uplifting, but hopefully changing the condition of Black people in America. So that was
Right.
really, really ambitious, but that was kind of the motivating factor in it.
Now, when you got into, you got a degree at Temple University in film, but how did you actually get into the movie industry? Because a lot of people go to school for it, but never really get the opportunity to actually work in film like you did. So, how did you get that first
Yeah, I must
job?
admit,
Or
I had, when I was decided I wanted to go into the film business, I didn't know how I was going to do it. If I had to, work in a camera store or a film lab or something like that. Fortunately, this group, Directors Guild of America, which is made up of most of the directors and production people, they had a training program and they had a competitive test. So I took this test, I think with about 1,000 people, and I passed it and I started working in New York, and it was an apprenticeship program. So you had to work for 2 years. I had to do 400 days within 2 years.
Right.
And so I was just gung-ho about it, and it was really great because you learned on the job about how movies were made at that time. I mean, they were made a lot different now because of the techniques and the technology and things like that. And at that time, I came out and I became what they call a second assistant director. There's the director, then he has assistants, and assistants handle all the logistics and administrative stuff, so the director can just deal with the talent directly and really learn the nuts and bolts of how you put together production, how it operates, what happens on and behind the scenes, how you can have a successful one, how you can have a disastrous one, depending on how you operate as a director, how you operate as part of the staff. But fortunately, with that competitive test, I got in. Otherwise, I don't know what I would have been doing in the business. I might have been out there driving a truck and working in the evenings, trying to make my own little movies or something like that.
Right.
But I was committed to doing it, and fortunately, that was at that time the opportunity opened up.
And let's just go back a minute. Like, you didn't just work as a DJ trainee on just any old film. Like, you worked on with some of the best, like Jane Fonda, Donald Sutherland, Gene Hackman. I mean, you had some really great people that you got to work starting off with. And was there anything that you learned from working with them that you still use today, even though technology has changed a lot? I feel like a lot of the old school stuff is still, I mean, the basics are still the basics. The laws are still the laws, or the rules, so to speak.
Well, I learned for one thing that I couldn't be an actor. I learned, you're
Yeah.
like bearing your soul and exposing your most intimate, vulnerable parts of your personality in a room with 300, 400, 500 people, picking their noses, watching equipment, hauling cable, eating their lunch, drinking sodas, smoking cigarettes, and not smoking cigarettes outside. But these actors can, bear it all, do it all, and be convincing and be compelling in front of people. But I also learned there was a difference between actors who just walked it through and actors who really did the job. We did a movie called Clute with Jane Fonda, and she played this prostitute, okay? So we built a stage set, which was similar to these West Side apartments. She's supposed to live on 43rd Street in New York, which would be like a walk-up housing. We built a stage set, and so for 3 weekends, she stayed on that set on the weekends. And then I'm thinking, that's kind of crazy. And we had a guard with her and stuff like that. But it was clear by the time we did the kitchen set, that kitchen was her kitchen. Where she had the salt, where she had the sugar, where she had the silverware, where she had the dishes. When she's talking and doing stuff in her kitchen, she's not faking it. That was her kitchen. She had moved
Oh,
everything around, had her
wow.
flowers and herbs and stuff like that. And it was that kind of dedication, that kind of reality, that kind of. I mean, she didn't have to do that. She could have come in and just said her lines. She could come and set her lines and gone home. We also.
That explains why she has that longevity. She's committed to it.
Yeah, well, she was serious.
Yeah.
I did this movie about a bicycle racer. I mean, I did a movie about the Brooklyn mob called The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight. It's about Joey Gallo, right? And there was a kid in there who had a little part, maybe like 2 or 3 days worth of work. But he would come in every day that he worked, and he would talk to the director just weeks beforehand. He'd do rehearsals, and he had an eye. How about, I think he might do this, or do you have this? And he did all this research on this boy. This was a boyfriend of Joey Gallo's sister. Just a small part. But he had such great ideas and such originality from his research that directors, when his role went from 3 days to 6 weeks.
Wow.
But that guy who did that work on his own, nobody asked him to do it. He could have just took the money and gone home. It was Robert De Niro.
No.
See, so Robert De Niro, when he was like, young guy, he was 20 years
Yeah.
old, right? He was working. He was doing his homework. He was contributing to the show. So
Yeah.
it's those kind of people who people say, "Oh, I don't know how." I mean, I think what you bring to the table, it has a lot about what kind of meal you eat.
Right.
I mean, because, he could have just walked through it. Jane Fonda didn't have to do that stuff. I mean, she did her research. She was playing this prostitute. We had some people we hooked her up with some real folks who were really in that life. You know, and she said she spent time with him, she hung out with him, she got to understand that whole world, you know, and there was a whole difference between black prostitutes on the street, white prostitutes who were in the boardrooms, white prostitutes were in, you know, at the
Yeah,
conventions,
yeah.
rich people. So it was a whole thing of that class and race there too. But you know, I think that I found out that the folks who did the homework, who were serious about it, who were dedicated to it, they have careers. We know their names. They're still out there now.
That's right. Like Robert De Niro. And I
Yeah,
remember even you gave me great advice about acting that you got from, oh, he played the Godfather. I'm blanking on his name.
Brando.
Brando, Marlon Brando. Do you remember what it was? It was something like always, I'll let you say
Well,
it.
well, I know one thing Brando said to me. He was talking about like the jokes. I said, "What do you mean the jokes?" He said, "Those are the lines. Those are the words." He said, "Listen, if you don't have the emotions right, it don't matter what you're saying. Nobody's gonna believe you." So he on each scene wanted to know what was the heart of the scene. What was it really about emotion? What was it really about from the heart and the soul? And then the words kind of just worked it out.
Right.
But if you had the words all perfect, but you weren't in tune with the emotions of the scene, it wasn't believable. It was a disconnect. So those kind of things that, you know, were like, and that were just, you know, just stuff that actors, they were serious about their craft, you know, and they did it professionally, did it successfully, and they became legendary because of it.
Now, just so I can back up a little bit and explain what you do in the industry. So you're a producer, but how did you get your start from DGA training to what you're doing now? Tell a little bit about what exactly your job entails for those that don't know, because I get asked all the time about you getting my friends or people I know, how do I get in the movies? How do I get in the movies? And I'm like, he's not a casting director. So
Right.
can you
Yeah.
explain a little bit more about what you do and how you got your start or how you went from DGA training to what you do now?
Well, in my guild, you can come in as a director basically if somebody hires you. If you get that job and they think you're qualified to, you know, do the creative job on their production, then you can join the Directors Guild. You pay an admission fee and things like that. But on the production side, which I'm on, there really were standards because you are handling monies, you're handling contracts, you're handling people. There's a lot of responsibilities. Sort of like the engineer who has to make sure the building doesn't not just look good, but also it won't fall down, it won't collapse. You know, it won't kill people. So we will. That's what the apprenticeship was important because you work with people in the business, and then you learn. Like in New York, I think it's something like 21 different unions. Or different, there's a lot of different craft positions that you're handling. So you know you read the contracts, you're talking to them, you're talking with the labor relations. The assistant director basically, which is the most fun position I think, because you're on the set with the director. And in Europe, it's a little bit different. In Europe, the assistant directors automatically become directors. I mean, you are working with the director, and you're there through casting, you're there through the writing, you're there through all the creative aspects of it, and you're working intimately with the talent. In the United States, the assistant director does a lot more managerial things, a lot more contractual things. You're making sure the paperwork and the timesheets and a lot of stuff for the actors, you're signing them in, signing them out, giving the call times. You're arranging the resources of the production for the director. So that if you have 12 scenes in Mary's house, you're not, and in the script that maybe that 12 different times a year, you'll try to shoot them all on the same day or same 2 or 3 days, so you don't have to go back and forth 12 times.
Right.
Just common sense, you know. But on the other hand, it means the actors have to have a little disjointed because it's not in continuity, it's not in the flow. So the actors have to be much more on their craft about, well, when did this happen? What was happening before? What's happening afterwards? But it's trying to get the director the most use of that money that they're provided, so they can spend it as intelligently, as efficiently as possible if they want to. Some directors resist that, some don't.
Yeah.
So your assistant director, you try to give them, here's a way that you can do this and save a lot of time, save a lot of effort, which hopefully will allow you to do a scene 5 or 10 different ways as opposed to only to have time to do it once.
Right.
So some smart directors think about that. Others, you know, want to do it their way, and that's okay. They want to reinvent the wheel and do it without the wheel. You know? I think a wheel's better than a sled, but you know, it's up to some directors.
I
So, you
okay.
know, we learn the mechanics of it, and we also have an opportunity to work with many different directors and see so many different styles of where they approach their craft, and whether they rehearse or don't rehearse, whether they want to improvise, whether they like to work with writers in the script, whether they want to try to change things at the last moment, whether they're knowledgeable about the craft and understanding how they can communicate with their crew and have everything ready that they want, and whether they really take the time to listen to these actors. Like, I think rehearsals are so vital because I think there's babysitting and there's actor sitting. babysitting doesn't pay as well, but it's kind of like the same crap. I mean, you're not hiring people because they're logistical or their logic or their education or their students. You're hiring them because their ability to emote, because their ability to give us a certain kind of emotional feeling with a piece of glass 2 inches from their face, or in a room with 100 people, or a room with 1,000 people, whether they're nude or clothed, and they will just do it authentically, and we believe them. And so it's a unique kind of craft. So my heart goes out to actors, because they're kind of now torn apart on social media and criticized about everybody couldn't do anything they
That's why
do.
I can't do the hot topic stuff, because I know how hard it is to be an actor and to be up there and to be ridiculed for it. Like, it's just unfair, I think, with the whole social media, just attacking them constantly. Anytime they make a slightest bit of mistake or misstep. I mean, sometimes they deserve it. Don't get me wrong if they're doing something illegal, but I mean, it's a hard job. It's not easy.
I also think that many of the people who give the criticism couldn't do 2% of what they do.
No.
So it's different if an actor criticizes another actor, like a doctor criticizes another doctor. But I'm just sometimes amazed at people who have so much to say and so little that they've done in their own life. How many little risks they've taken, how many little things they've accomplished. But it's tough, and particularly an actor of color is harder because some originally, not originally, but historically, the United States has been so hard on people of color, black people particularly, so segregationist, so much white supremacy in the whole way they operated. So time you get an actor on who would try to make sure that he or her had a role that had some dignity, some depth, some complexity, some humanness to it, because you kind of represent the whole community.
Yeah.
Now with a lot more roles and a lot more people of color on the screen, you're not necessarily representing the community, so people can maybe have more freedom. But I do believe that I just sort of get sorry when I see black people going up there and playing into stereotypes. Okay, you're just belittling yourself. You're just being a buffoon. You're just being like a stepping festival minstrel show. If that's what you want your grandchildren, if that's what you feel about yourself, okay, you have the right to do that. It's not what I would want to do. It's not what I want to live with. It's gonna be there forever.
I mean,
There's a
that's
lot of
why
us.
I turn down more stuff than I say yes to sometimes, because I hear your voice in the back. It's also saying, like, is that really how you want to be represented? Is that how you want to bring our the culture forward? And I remember as a kid, you would say to me, "Don't do anything that you wouldn't want to see in the newspapers publicly." And now it's social media, so there is no. I mean, you don't have to worry about the newspaper. If somebody has a smartphone,
Yeah,
it can ruin your career or your image very easily.
I think a lot of people don't think about what the future is going to be. So you can do something. Okay, but I don't hold somebody what they did when they're 10 years old, what I expect them to do when they're 20. When they're 10 years
Right.
old, they're a child and not thoughtful. When they're 20, they should be somewhat of an adult. By the time they're 30, you're responsible for it. There's no excuses. This is you. If you haven't been educated any further, that's your tragedy, but it's not my fault. You're just a fool.
Yeah.
I do like the fact that it used to be at a certain point, the black actors stuck together and they would be saying, well, look, if I'm going to have this part and I'm going to lead this show, I want some people on the crew who look like me.
Mm-hmm.
And I know certain actors were doing that quite a bit, and I would get jobs because they'd say, well, we want somebody in the crew. Dwight, so-and-so's been requesting other people. Are you willing to take the show? And I look at it and say, sure, So, I mean, that kind of staying, like, let's help each other out, each one teach one, each one help one was really, at some point, helpful in the industry. It's not as much prevalent now, but
I know that kind of spoiled me growing up on sets, working with you, like on New Jack City, Jason's Lyric, Women of Brewster's Place. I'm trying to think of all, because you've done so many. But it was like, not only was it a lot of black folk in front of the camera, but it was also behind the camera, like the hairstylists, the producers, the directors. And so you got kind of, it almost felt like a family reunion every time we would go to a different set, because there'd be a lot of the same people. And then when I started working jobs that were considered more mainstream, that wasn't the case. Like, it would be me and that would be it, or whoever was playing my love interest or something, or my best friend or whatever. Like, we would be the only brown. I was even described in an entertainment news article as the chocolate sprinkles in a vanilla ice cream cone when I worked on Dawson's Creek. So it's just
right.
one of those things I feel like is so important to make sure people know that if you're noticing that the hair or the makeup doesn't look right, it's because they're not hiring people that look like the actor, or even as far as lighting, like sometimes it's not being lit correctly. It's because they kind of light only to certain complexions and they forget that all of us want to be seen and you properly. And sometimes when they do include all people, like tradition, like the real America that's out there, they'll miss those voices or miss that opportunity to notice that because there's nobody there telling them, hey, by the way, he needs to be lit more in order for him to show up properly, or so on.
Right.
And so, like, for you, there was someone that made sure that you were part of the crew. And was there anyone that you felt like had such a big impact on making sure you were there that helped you get your career started? Or
It's interesting. Ozzie Davis in the beginning was going to direct a movie called Gordon's War, and they wanted a black first, and so they bumped me up. I was in the running, but you had to have a certain number of days, but they just elevated me, let me take that shot because of
yeah,
him. Because he really demanded, he and Ruby Dee were trying to make sure that in front of the camera as well as behind the camera, there were people of color who got a chance, and that's, wow, you just cut out. Can you still see me? Hello?
oh, sorry
Hello,
about
can you hear?
that. My internet just went out for a minute. I don't know what happened. I think
Oh,
my
okay,
daughter's
yeah.
Netflixing and chilling downstairs.
Oh,
Sorry
no,
about
okay,
that.
no, yeah. So Ozzie Davis helped me a lot. The other person who was interesting, who at that time was a big, like higher black and was raising Cane, even though he's later lost his credentials, was Bill Cosby was
Mm,
doing a lot of stuff too. I mean, he was really advocating for it. And then a number of black organizations were pushing and picketing and raising Kane's studios, and they were like taking stunt players and painting them down in
mm,
blackface and to play black actors rather than hire black stunt people. So there was an organization called the Black Stuntman Association doing things. And then people were just pushing that, hey, look, we can do these jobs if you give us an
mm.
opportunity. One
Right,
of the things that I know the black directors were doing, and black producers, we said we don't want purple people. We want you to light our people.
right.
Pay attention to that. Same with the makeup and hair, but also a lot of the jobs that people get. And the unions are good, but at some point unions were blocking people getting into the unions. So we were trying to have
Mm,
apprenticeship programs to get people into the unions so they get qualified. I mean, it might not seem something, but we got 5 electricians. And these guys are making $75,000 or $150,000 a year. That's a good job for a lot of people.
that
So if you
is.
can get somebody into those positions where they qualify, and if they do their jobs and they work and they hustle, they'll keep getting hired. So, I was trying to always, when I first started a show, before I even got on the show, start to call around to people who could be crew, to start having a list of people I could recommend for various positions if they were available. So that
Yeah.
was why when I would be on the show, I wouldn't be the only black person.
Right,
But
right.
normally the good jobs are good jobs. People, so they're giving to their cousin, to their girlfriend, to their dope dealer, to their boyfriend, whatever, their boyfriend's cousin's hairdresser. So you get on the show and all the positions are filled weeks before the job even starts.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
that's the industry. People are, that nepotism thing, which the president practices, has been going on for generations, with
Oh,
good
for sure.
jobs.
No, it was, you would find out how, like, later on, how so many people are related to certain things. You're like, oh, that's how you got, because it's
Yeah,
not cheap either to be in the film industry, because you do have those lapses of time when you're not working, and you can't just get like a straight job in between those times, because you never know when you're going to be working or auditioning it for actors and so on. And so it is one of those more elite professions as well. But like you mentioned, if you get into the union, it's not, you don't need a degree for some of those positions, but it's still hard to get into because they're limiting it to only, like, you have to work a certain amount of hours. You can only do this. Then how do you get those certain amount of hours if no one will hire you in the
right.
first place? So it's very difficult. Now, has there been, I already know the answer to this, but what would you say would be the biggest difference that you've seen from working in the film industry when it was film as opposed to now it's digital? And like, because you are the CFO, like, of pretty much a film, well, that's the way I describe it to people, that since you do a lot of the budgets, what have you find to be the biggest difference in working in film now compared to when it was in film,
Well, I think
real film?
the equipment is more mobile. I think the equipment is better. You can higher quality.
Mm,
I think it's smaller, so it allows a lot more flexibility in the shooting. Because you run digital film, a roll of film we have 1,000-foot rolls in most of those magazines. That would maybe run 10 and a half, 11 minutes the most. But with digital, you can shoot longer takes. That's good and that's bad depending on how the director uses it. So you can have repetitive. You can stay on the set and shoot many more versions, or you could shoot many more scenes. Uh, I think so. So I think somewhat the cost of productions on the equipment side has maybe gone down. Fortunately, because on the crew side, I think the cost of production, because we're now paying people better, so has gone up. Um, but I think that what has happened mostly is not the technology, but I think the proliferation of more companies. So you have more. So you have Hulu, you have
Right, all
all
the
these streaming
streaming.
companies that are
Right.
creating original content. And because they realize black people are a large part of the audiences, there's a lot of writers and directors now who are getting work. A lot of actors are getting work because they're creating roles about people that are, real people, and real situations. Like Lisa Ray with Insecure, shows like
Right.
that are just women being women, and not particularly black or white. They're just young women living their life in America today. And I thought that's a great thing to stay. It's not like we're always battling the man and the man is battling us, and we're worried about drug dealers, and we're worried about the super rich or the super poor. They just, girls living in America and having the same frustrations and ambitions and desires and triumphs and tragedies as anybody else. So I love those kind of projects that are being done. I think they're kind of authentic and they're good.
And I love the lighting of that show too. The way she lights black people in that movie, it shows us in so many different lights. Like it's not just, I don't know, like she really plays up the diversity of the skin tones as well, where you can just see I mean, they don't play into the colorism that a lot of black shows sometimes do. Like they just show the diversity of us all getting along, all different shades, and I don't know. I love that part of the show as well. And how there's a
Season
lot
show.
of comments coming in. I feel like I need to at least address some of these before we keep going. Because Michael Simmons, which is one of your SNCC brothers, he's on here saying a few things, and I want to make sure I bring him up. He says, every African American in the industry with whom I have talked to about Dwight Williams talk about how he pushes for diversity behind the camera. And then he also says Dwight also was one of the first to call for Black Power while a member of SNCC. In addition, he was one of the authors of the document that laid the foundation for Temple University's Black Studies Department. Do you want to talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, we kind of organized a thing at Temple where these white kids. I went to Temple for 2 years, stopped for 2 years, came back for 2 years. But I came back for 2 years after I'd been organizer with SNCC in the South. These white folks, some sorority or fraternity, put on some kind of black minstrel show, and all the black folks were upset and angry and this and that, and we should do this and we should do that. And I looked around the room and realized there were fraternities and sororities, the athletes there, the jocks, the dorm students, the blacks, the super black, black power students were there in the organization. And I realized that this is the first time you all probably ever been in the same room together. Because the jocks are by themselves, the fraternity Greeks are over there, the black Greeks over there, the black power group is over there. I said, so maybe what we ought to try to do is use this as an opportunity to meet on a regular basis. So we set up a thing called the Steering Committee for Black Students. And so we had two people representing each of these various categories, two from each of the fraternities, two from each of the sororities, two from the Black Studies group, two from the athletes, two from the dorm studios, two from the art schools. I think it became like 26 people, something like that, in the steering committee. And after a period of time, we decided we were going to get this thing called, they had a whole series of demands they wanted to push toward the university. And I said, that's great, that's wonderful. But I was watching a lot of student groups were pushing for demands toward the university. The student university would push back, find out who the leaders were, isolate them, and expel them from school. So as a strategy, I was trying to think, well, how do we make sure we can really say we represent the whole school? So we decided to have a thing called, which was really my idea, it's called a tribute to black parents. We decided to have a weekend where we would bring black students, because Temple University was set in the middle of North Philadelphia, all black community, but it's almost all white school. And so we decided we were going to have all the black students on one weekend. I forget the weekend, but it was like 4 or 5 weeks in advance. Invite their parents to the university, and we'd take them around the campus, maybe put on a play, have a dinner for them. Because most of these people were the first in their family to go to college. Most of us were low income, some a little better off than others, but all of us struggling, and all of us recognized the contradiction of going to a white college in the middle of a black community. And if you were a black person in the neighborhood and you walked on the campus, you probably got arrested or hassled by the cops. So we put on this thing called a tribute to black parents. And we got to demand the university give us a dinner. We had drama students put on plays and everything like that. But also what it also allowed us to do is every black student, the most radical, the most moderate, the most conservative, the most religious, the most apolitical, the most agnostic, all signed up to be a part of it. By the end of that time, we could say we had the phone numbers and addresses of something like 3,500 students. And we could really say we were representing those students. So we did that maybe a month and a half later. It was really nice. Kids loved it. Parents loved it. Helped a lot of families. But then by the time we came to the university and started making demands, if the university pushed back on us, we also had a phone tree. We had the fraternities and sororities. They had pledges, right? We set it up so that basically within 6 hours, we could call maybe like 1,000 people on the phone because we had all people's phone numbers. So every pledge has 20 people he has to call. And we had maybe 200 pledges between the fraternities and sororities. We had a way to make sure we could reach our base of support, the students. The university said this. They're trying to get after John. The university said that. They won't do this. The university wants to do this. The university said that. So we could call the students, and we started doing it. But also we started realizing, wait a minute, how do we serve our students? So one of the things we asked the seniors to do was tutor the juniors. Juniors tutor the sophomores. Sophomores tutor the freshmen. And everybody donate books. So we then said, if you come to the steering committee, that's a place you can hang out. That's a place you can get tutoring. Helpful. That's a place you can get books. Helpful. Also, we went to the financial services community, financial aid, said we want to get information about how to apply for financial aid. A lot of students were qualified for it out of maybe feeling of shame or feeling like, well, I'm going to pull myself up a bootstrap. I'm not going to apply. And they were dropping out of school. They were having all these hardships. And I was like, no, man, look, that money's there. Take the money. The white folks are taking the money. You deserve it. You got
Guilty.
roaches.
Yeah.
You got all these problems. So I made sure that the Student Association, the African American Student Association, was a support center for students. Free books, tutoring, financial aid advice. And then we came to the university, said we represent these students. It was true. We're intimately aware of their problems, intimately aware of their needs and their frustrations, intimately making sure that we were talking to them and that we could address legitimate concerns. And we pushed for a Black Studies program at that school. And eventually it took about 2 years of struggle, but they really set up a Black Studies program. And we also made sure that we started them relating to the neighborhood. So that basically the idea was if you were in the top 25% of your classes in that community that you could apply to and get preferential treatment to get into Temple University. Because we're saying you're in this community, you should be a part of this community, not just a cancer on its breast, but hopefully some medicinal and service to the area which you're taking advantage of. And so, it was, but those were the kind of things about organizing and what can an organization do for a community. We got to listen to the community. We got to serve the community. We got to be beneficial to them. And whereas other schools were getting isolated and having their student associations thrown off campus and having the kids expelled, that couldn't happen. We also put out newspapers, a newspaper called the Black Torch. We got the writers and the artists and photographers and stuff like that. Because you have to communicate with your membership.
Right.
We started putting out pamphlets. If somebody was pushing for something and advocating for something and the university pushed back, we'd have pamphlets out in 4 or 5 hours. So-and-so got arrested for being at the library. So-and-so got arrested for demanding such and such a chemistry law. So-and-so got pushed back for asking the athletic people to let the Black kids in the neighborhood play in the athletic field. And so the university had to take it seriously. I mean, they didn't want to. They came to me, matter of fact, I was in my, I think, junior year, and trying to offer, the Washington Post, I was in communications at the time. The Washington Post has this job in D.C., Dwight, and, they're looking for Black people, and you're in journalism, and you're in communication and stuff like that. I said, yeah, but if I take that job, I'd have to leave, leave school. I said, oh, we'll work that out, So they were trying to buy me out to leave campus.
Oh,
They wanted to
wow.
get me off campus. Now, I mean, I was sort of like, I guess at one point I was the president, but I mean, there were a whole group of us. Michael was a real organizer. There were a lot of folks doing this work. I was just one person there. Maybe I had more ideas than others because I had some more experience and had been in different groups by then. But this is clearly a campus-wide group. A lot of women, a lot of men, a lot of folks who were putting their efforts in. So it wasn't like it was Dwight Williams leading the world.
Right.
But they realized, I guess, getting me out of the campus would get that burr off that saddle, get them out, get me away. So, I mean, people try to buy you off. I just wasn't for sale at that time. I try to tell people, in this life, you should sell your intelligence, not your integrity.
Yep.
You want to be able to look in the mirror every day and feel you did the best you could for the world and for yourself. And, people talk about they have to get high and they got to get this to relax. Wait a minute. Get high from what? Let your life be the high. Let your actions be the high. That's your integrity, your commitment to the truth. If you don't live above your means, so if you get slapped back, you don't get this project, or you don't get that project, you're okay. You still have your self-respect. You still have your dignity. You still have your integrity. I think that's important in life.
I couldn't agree more. I got some more coming through. Well, Michael Simmons brought up again about You being the editor for Black Torch student community that engage Black students in the community to make Temple more accessible to the surrounding Black community, which you already spoke about. But then I want to go back. Tyrone Dixon mentioned how excited he is about working with you on Eight Wheels and some Soul Brother music.
Oh,
So
yeah,
he brought that
Tyrone's a
up.
talented director. Yeah.
Yeah, we love Tyrone. And so let me see, make sure I don't forget anyone else. Most people are just complimenting. They're just amazed by all the stories, the different things you're saying, just saying how awesome you are. And then I have this one question: is there any one person who helped when you first got started? And I know you mentioned Ozzie Davis earlier, but was there anyone else maybe? And you mentioned Bill Cosby as well, but
I mean, I was fortunate. I mean, because see, my position was I was there to learn. So
yeah.
most human beings, if you ask them what they do and you sit with them and you listen with them, so I talk to the truck driver what he does. I talk to the makeup person. I talk to the wardrobe person. I talk to the location person. I talk to the accountant. I talk to the electrician. I wanted to learn how to make movies, and there's maybe like 20 different departments. So in every project, whenever I had some free time, I would sit and kind of like spend a day or so interviewing these people. Quite often, I was the only Black one on the crew. Matter of fact, I'll tell you, I grew up in Philadelphia, but we working in New York. We working in New York in the wintertime. And they were talking about this thing called Eddie Bauer. I don't know what Eddie Bauer was. And they said, Eddie, about to get these Eddie Bauers. They were talking about winter clothing that's goose down, that's padded, because you're working outside and it's 15, 20 degrees, and you got to be there for 8, 10, 12 hours. You know, you'll freeze to death.
Yeah.
I mean, so I was so ignorant of it, but the crew kind of took up a collection to get me these kind of winter clothing, because at the time I think I was making $125 a week. I think I was renting my station wagon for $150. So my station wagon I was renting out to the production was making more money than me.
Wow.
But and helped me get this winter clothing, and because you had to buy it cash, you know, in advance, stuff like that. So I mean, I cannot say that, you know, white people were not used to Black people being in positions of authority, and I wasn't at that time. But I was just learning. But I was also deciding that, you know, hey, I'm not coming in here to convert them. I'm not coming in here to teach or preach. I'm coming here to learn.
Right.
My plan was learn and leave the country. So I wasn't really trying to like win friends, but on the other hand, I wasn't disrespecting them. So if I knew something, like if they send me out to get some coffee for actors, I would get coffee for the actors and the crew too. Or if they tell me to, you know, order some food, or if I know we expect to get off not 7 o'clock but 9 o'clock, I would tell the crew that. If I'm going someplace where we're going to look at a location the next day, I used to want to be an architect, because I did all these drawings and maps and stuff. So I would have these very detailed maps of things. So the drivers would always get with me because they'd want to know what the location was like, what the streets were, and what the parking was, and so forth and so on. So I had a lot of information. So I kind of became valuable. Because you're valuable, people treat you with respect. The other thing I did, which was a little nefarious, but I knew it would work. There was a whole bunch of people who didn't respect Black people. Okay, that's cool. You don't respect Black people, that's your business, all right? But they respect money. So the accountants would pass out, in New York, there was a thing where you could pass out the checks early, have them signed, and get them cash. And the crew wanted to have cash on the weekend, because a lot of companies would pay with fraudulent checks. So I would go to the accountant and say, listen, I'll take those things around. So I would take it around to the crew, have everything signed. I would get their checks cash and hand the cash back to the crew. I did that. Now, it was a nuisance to the accountants, but I know that, wait a minute, when this Black boy walks up to these, I don't say bigoted, but let's say, you know, typical, you know, white Americans, and I'm the one that they're signing with their paychecks, I'm the one they're signing and get handing their cash, they're going to associate me with cash, me with their money. And they're going to give somebody a hard time, they're going to think about that. You know, it's not like I said that I'm the reason you're going to get fired, or I'm the reason you're getting paid. I didn't hire you, I didn't fire you. But then there was somewhere along that line, Dwight is there connected with my money. And so maybe I'm not going to give Dwight a hard time, or do, you know, call him a nigger behind his back, or whatever stuff they be trying to do. You know, so I just very quickly decided every job I was on, I would make sure that people understand that if you mess with me, there might be repercussions. It was really fake. It was not true. But I just, you know, hey, I just want to play their game. So let me look like I have more power than I do. And it just worked. And also, the people, mostly, if you respect them, particularly when you interview them, you want to know what they're doing. And then once you know what they're doing on one job, the next job, you know how to make it easy for people. You know what things they do want to know, what things they don't want to know. You know. One thing interesting I remember that the crew taught me, though, there was a lot of the Teamsters in New York were Irish, and they really stuck together. They were talking about how that in this Directors Guild that I'm a member of, that we would eat each other, was what they said. That's what they talked about. So they said, you will never hear a Teamster down another Teamster in public.
Mhm.
You never know hear a Teamster backstab another Teamster in public. They're going to stick together, at least in front of management. So these director guild members, they'll kill each other off for a job.
Mhm.
They'll stab each other in the back. They'll make each other look bad, you know. And he said it's ridiculous, you know. And it was interesting that, you know, this was just what this white guy pulled me aside. He said, I don't know what your group does, you know. And he wasn't talking about black people because there's very few black people at the time of the organization. But that,
Mhm.
you know, those union members had decided there was a certain solidarity they were going to have. If somebody's late on the job, somebody's drunk on the job, somebody's incompetent on the job, they would cover for them.
I know.
But in my guild, somebody was messed up. They would just expose them, get rid of them, you know,
Yep.
have no solidarity. So it was interesting how working people had different views and you know, talked about this kind of labor solidarity and what you can do to be successful, what you don't have to do.
And I know from child, like you always were preaching about union and sticking together, and a good captain takes care of his troops. Like it was a consistent message, regardless of whether it was with education or working in film. And I just remember even working on set as a kid with you, is that you made a point of me making sure I learned from all the different departments. Even though I was like, I want to be an actress, you're like, well, you got to hang out in wardrobe and hang out with props. Like I had to learn all the different things, and I think it helps a lot of people in that sense. But what do you think is important for people to do if they're looking at joining or getting into the movie business? What would you say would be the best path nowadays, since you're a chair for the DGA and so on, like you work with a lot of different
Well, I mean,
people now, so
what is really available now that wasn't years ago at film schools? I
mm,
mean, you really can go to film schools and become a really qualified, great filmmaker. You know, the writing programs, the directing programs, the American Film Institute, things like that. So you really can. Also, the iPhones now, the cameras now, the digital technology, the power and speed of these computers, you really can start making your projects on your own and making your 2 and 3 and 5 minute projects and 10-minute projects and things like that, because people want to see your work.
right.
So I think, you know, I think if you're going to be a filmmaker, you got to make films. If you want to be a writer, you got to write. If you're an actor, to be an actor. I think people should be busy in their craft and take every opportunity to just do it and do it and do it and do it. And know that you're going to make many, many mistakes, but you're learning all the time. So the mistake you make
Mhm.
last week, it's not really a mistake, it's a lesson.
Right.
And the next week is the next week. I think that what's more important is persistence, not talent, not
Hmm.
ability, persistence. Persistence will keep you knocking the door. Persistence will keep you getting back up. Persistence will keep you trying and trying and trying, and you'll get better at it. But also, the person who quits, the person who stops, the person who gets discouraged, the person who goes home, when the job finally opens up, right now the nation's locked up, so
Hmm.
nobody's working.
Right.
But when this lockdown is over, will you be ready? Will you have things that you've written, or will you have taken this opportunity to get better at whatever craft you're doing, that you
Hmm.
can come at it and more accelerated? It's not going to be a fair playing field.
No.
You're not going to be as positioned as some rich producer or rich actor's son or daughter.
Hmm.
But if you have better skills, if you have more persistence, if you have more ingenuity, if you know your craft as well or better, then at least you're competitive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Speaking of that, so many different opportunities are now available for free classes, virtual classes, and even there's all these different podcasts and different things. Are there any that you suggest or that you've seen? I know I've even shared some with you, and you're like, "Yeah, I'm already taking these classes." Is there any that you would suggest for other people to check out that are legit? Because some of them are not. I mean, some people are
well,
just
I
being
don't know. I mean,
opportunistic. Yeah.
there's a plethora of things on YouTube, so I can't speak for that. But I mean, I definitely think you should try to, you know, because if you're interested in wardrobe and design,
Mhm.
you know, this is a great opportunity for that. You know, if you're interested in writing, you know, if you're interested in photography, so I think you got to decide which are the things that really you love to do, and which are the things that you have a skill set that you already had opportunity to exercise on.
Mhm.
But I wouldn't just sit home and be complacent. You know, yeah, you can
No.
binge on television, but this is really a time that you've got all the things that you didn't have a chance to do before. Make a list of them and start checking them off on that list to get better at what you're doing. The industry is going to come back. The world is going to need entertainment. People want
Mhm.
distraction. People want education. People want to know. So now's the time to, you know, rev up your engines and just go gung ho for it. I mean, but YouTube does have. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on there that's nonsense, but there are things
Yeah.
you can really learn. You know, and there are places where you can go and you can have people. You know, you can just get different levels of skills at
Mhm.
in whatever aspects of the world you want to learn.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I had some questions that were brought up to me earlier today, and one of which is, how does an artist submit their music to be featured in a film, or products for that nature as well? Because I know you deal with a lot of that too, as far as like paying for, or they have to pay you, actually pay to be on films and so on, for product placement and so on.
Well, those are
Not you
two different
directly,
questions.
but
Well,
yeah.
I mean, you really do need to try to get with an agent to represent you, to
Okay.
present your work, because there's a lot of possibilities of people getting sued if somebody says that you stole somebody's work because you have a song that's similar to somebody else's. So you want to know that. And so, I mean, it is trying to get your material out in the public, even if it's for free, so you get
Okay.
recognized and you get some legitimate representation. And also part of that is I think people should be trying to take business courses about the entertainment industry, even if you are a musician, or even if you are a camera person, or even if you are an actor, because it is the entertainment business. And if that business side is not working, then it doesn't matter unless it's a charity case that people aren't going to hire you again. And if you're not doing something that's not commercial, it may be an art film that you're doing, but if you're trying to do a commercial film, then hopefully you're paying attention to where the market's going, and are you giving people what they're buying.
Right.
Boots in wintertime and sandals in summertime, not boots in summertime and sandals in wintertime. So
Right.
you
Right.
have to think about that. Are you staying current with what's going on?
Well,
I'm sorry.
also, I think with so much downtime, once all this quarantine is over, it's going to be like the floodgates are going to be open. People are going to be desperate for content, just to make up for all the pilot seasons that different things they weren't able to make, and the productions that were already in production that had to stop. What would you suggest for people who have scripts or who have films in their heads that they want to get made? What would you suggest as far as getting that film out there? Do you also suggest they get an agent for that as well, or maybe just work with who they know and make their own film? What would you suggest for them?
Well, I mean, there's parts of that I mean, I can say yes to both of them. Yes, you want the agent, but yes, you need to make your own film. But I don't suggest that you try to make a full-out film. Uh, People want to see the quality of your work, not the quantity. You
Okay.
make a 45-minute film that's mediocre, that's poorly done, that's boring, that just looks tedious and doesn't look competitive, or you make a 3 or 5 minute short that's brilliant, that's
Right.
fascinating, that's captivating, and you want to see more of it. I think that 5 minute short does you better than the 45 minute, piece that is just too long. So I kind of recommend that people try to hone their craft, whether it's photography or acting or writing or directing, whatever it be, and have representative samples of their work so you can show it. The same with the writers, I mean, having things reviewed and reviewed and reviewed. People criticize studios, but they do have a rigorous story department. So these studio films will at least make sense. They may
Right.
be fluff pieces, but they won't just have all these kind of logical holes in them and stuff in it. So I think that you want to. The public sees a lot of projects, so nobody's going to forgive you if you didn't have enough money to do it well. But if you don't have enough money to do A, maybe you should try to do B or C. Do what your money allows, but do that excellently. Do it extravagantly. Do that extraordinary, so people are fascinated and want to see more.
Yeah.
But just don't try to do a car race when you can't, match now what they had in the French Connection, or match what they had in Bullet, or match what they had in these other action movies now. Maybe don't do something, maybe do a roller skate race. I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
you can't, I mean, there is basketball before Michael Jordan, and there's basketball after Michael Jordan. There's basketball before LeBron James. There's basketball after LeBron James. If you can't do what LeBron James can, maybe you should stay the heck off the court.
There you
Maybe
go.
you do shadow basketball. Maybe you do video basketball.
Yeah, maybe you're a reporter for basketball.
Yeah. So
Other
I
options.
think that you're going to be judged, and black people can't just say just because we're black people that we don't have the same high quality standards as somebody else. We're going to have higher standards, higher expectations.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Now I
think
have
you got to really be good at your craft.
Okay. I have to bring up, because you've worked on some speaking of, because someone you just brought up, actually, I'll read out what Mimi wrote. Dwight hired me to work with him and John Singleton, Stephanie Elaine, and Preston Holmes on Hustle and Flow as his producer assistant. Throughout the years, he's always been a cheerleader for me through writing TV, comedy, going back to school at Berkeley, and now coming back to the industry working on BMF. Definitely want to hear more about that. by the way, and The Handmaid's Tale as a script coordinator. Last week, I advanced into the second round of the Sundance Episodic Lab with a drama pilot I wrote with Dwight's support. He is an awesome boss, mentor, and friend, and I'm grateful to him. So I just want to make sure I read that to you.
Oh,
That's so sweet. It's
good.
giving me goosebumps. And I just want to talk about, because you've worked on so many great films like Hustle and Flow, but also New Jack City, Jason's Lyric, Who's the Man, We the Peoples, Best Man Holiday, Snowfall, Baby Boy, Players Club, and one of my favorites, historical type film, Rosewood even. And
Mm.
I just want to, out of all the films you worked on, what film do you think you're the most proud of, and which film do you think was it like, yeah, which film do you think that you worked on you're the most proud of? Because you've done so many. I mean, even Beat Street, A Soldier Story. I can go on and on. I mean, IMDb does not give you justice. There's way more on your resume than I could ever
Well,
go
I don't,
through.
I mean, you have to give writers credit. Craig
Yeah.
Brewer wrote a really fascinating story with Hustle and Flow, and he's gone on to great acclaim because of that. I worked with John Singleton a lot on projects. So he did Rosewood, he did Baby Boy, We were trying
Legal
to do a movie about
Tender.
Emmett Till recently before John passed.
Yeah.
Um, I like
Is there
Malcolm
any
Lewis.
plans to continue that? Do you know, or with the
I,
Emmett Till film?
I understand some other people and producers are trying to go ahead with that story. I don't know which
Okay.
group is going to do it, but it's a
Okay.
powerful piece of American life that we should know a lot more about.
Yeah. I know you were also like working on the 1968 Olympics piece possibly too. Is there any talks about that still getting done, or definitely on the back
Well,
burner?
a friend of mine and partner, Preston Holmes, is deep involved in that. I think they're still trying to do that. I
Hmm.
think they might be doing it. I'm not sure if they're going to do it in the United States or in Canada, but yeah, I believe that's still something
That's right,
that's,
because you were on your way to New Mexico, I think, for it, or where?
yeah, at one point they were trying to do it
Yeah.
in New Mexico, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
Well.
one of those things that's up in the air. I mean, I think that I have a lot of respect for writers. I mean, I
Hmm.
really do. And I also have a lot of respect for the black community. I think a lot of people play our audiences too cheap. They just
Hmm.
give people, they're sort of like soap operas they put out. They're not
I
really
can say it, Tyler
challenging. They're
Perry
not,
movies.
I was going to let that
I'll
person's name,
say it. I'll say
let them be
it.
nameless. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
look, if they're financial cash cows, it keeps people working, it
No,
builds
I mean, there's
studios, it
definitely
builds
an
production.
audience for it, but it's
Yeah,
not for everyone. Like, I can't relate to the storylines.
but I kind of like they're soap operas, they're episodic, and they keep people
Mhm.
working, and there's a need for that. That's wonderful.
Mhm.
But I hopefully we can do that, and also give people some other things to think about, other things to challenge them with, other things that give them some aspirations for the way their life can be and the world they want to be. I think that's why the movie Black Panther was so successful, because it kind of created for black people this kind of fantasy dream world that white people have all the time. They have
Mhm.
their Star Wars and their Star
You're
Treks
right.
and all these other things, and they can fantasize about the worlds and where they're leaders and they're traveling through dimensions and time and
Yeah.
conquering everything they see and controlling everything they don't see. So to finally have black people have that kind of opportunity to let our minds and our get out of this cage we're put in here in this society, I thought that was fascinating. So I'm glad that that was done. But those are writers. I think we got to
Yeah.
let people have the creative freedom to do that. And also, I think sometimes we're so super critical on each other that maybe we're like breaking each other down as opposed to building each other up.
Mhm.
I like criticism, but I think the criticism should be towards advancing somebody's craft, helping them get better at it. Thinking about, hey, you went over here a little bit. Maybe you should go this way. As opposed to why'd you go at all. I
Right.
don't.
Right.
And I don't want that crabs in the barrel mentality. I think that's a holdover from white supremacy. I don't think we should be
Mhm.
perpetuating that and doing that.
We're better than that now. Like, and um, trying to think, make sure I don't skip anybody else. What project do I already have that down? Okay. Just making sure I didn't skip any questions that are here live. Yeah, I think I got all of them that were written up there. But just since so many people are stuck at home, and I feel like since you've been through the civil rights movement, you can kind of speak to hope that things will get better because you've seen us And you've seen America be a lot worse and go through a lot through your time, and just being part of it, like being proactive in that sense, where you actually went down to the South to voting. And also, a lot of people are saying that since their candidate isn't going to be on the ballot anymore, they're not willing to go out and vote, and they don't feel like their votes matter. And I know from an early age, like even when the first time I went to go vote, we did like a whole photo shoot almost, like me at the booth, like celebrating it. Like it's always been an important part of our lives. What would you say to those people who are thinking of not voting or feel so dire with everything that's going on right now? Because you're always so hopeful.
Well, I'm not hopeful, but I mean, I think that unless you plan to leave the planet, then you want to
Mm,
have some stake in your future. There are
right,
people who control what you do the minute you step out of your house. They control the police, they control the courts, they control the taxes, they control the laws. And unless you plan to be a revolutionary, the easiest way in America to do that is to vote people in power who represent your point of view.
right,
Now, if candidate A is 100% of your view and candidate B is 70% of your view, and the other guy over there who's in power, you know, the orange mess up there in D.C., if he's 0% of your power, then maybe 70% is better than zero. So
right.
if you stay home, then you just giving up. You just
Yep,
punking out. You
yep.
you just like saying, okay, well, I'm going to withdraw. Well, if you withdraw, that person in power stays in power. That
Hmm.
person who will probably run you into the gas chambers, next month or something like that, after he gets back in power, is going to be there. So you're just voting for your own extinction. You're just voting for your
Hmm.
own extermination. You're just voting your own self and your own community into the worst tragedy. I mean, it's much more dangerous now than it was in the 60s. In the 60s, under
Mm,
segregation, the black community was unified. It was forced unity.
mm,
I mean, you couldn't shop certain places. You couldn't get jobs certain places. You couldn't eat certain places. You couldn't go to school certain places. So you knew who had your back. But all these people who may not have liked each other, but they had to work together. Now, because of integration and people have assimilated all over these places, there's a great deal of like, well, I'm for my thing here. I'm doing my own thing.
right.
Okay, you doing your own thing till that cop stops you on the road. No, he sees is a black thing. He don't see a
Yep.
gray thing. He don't see a straight or white or black. He sees you a black thing, not even a man or woman. He don't care if you are cis or straight or LGBTQ. He don't care. He just sees a black thing, and he may treat you like a thing and stomp you into death. Or he may
Hmm.
treat you wonderfully because he's worried about his pension. Voting will make you worry about his pension. Voting will give you
Right.
certain powers. It's not going to be perfect, but your
Hmm.
family's not perfect, but you deal with them. So why
Hmm.
expect the person you vote for office to be perfect? But he will be better than nobody, or definitely better than what we have now. These people in power now are rolling back the clean air. Everybody breathes. They're rolling back
Hmm.
clean water. They're rolling back the amount of efficiency of gasoline for cars. So you have to have your car is going to be worse off now than it was 10 years ago. They're
Hmm.
rolling back regulations on
And
toys. They're
fun.
rolling back all these regulations while we're over here worrying about, well, is Trump doing this or did Trump say that or this and that? These rules and regulations are like the police or the industry. Okay, so they got student loans. When I went to school, you could go to college for $150 a semester. I went to
Mm.
Temple, 150 semester, $300 a year. People going to school now, $15,000, $20,000, $25,000. When I went to school, the only person offering a loan was a university or the federal government. Then
Mm.
they decided that they would change the bankruptcy laws so students could no longer declare bankruptcy on student loan debt. The minute they did that, the finance community came in like sharks, like monsters, and offered all these loans to people because they could no longer declare bankruptcy. So people coming
Mm.
out of school with $200,000 in debt, $150,000 in debt, $100,000 worth of debt. The same education I paid $150 for.
Mm.
Same education, not a bit better, and not
No,
much different.
no.
But they got a huge debt and they have no capacity to pay it back, and they know they can't be in bankruptcy. That means that people are not going to buy a house, not going to buy a car. They're going to be angry, upset, frustrated their whole life, and they're kind of like going to educational servitude.
Hmm.
I mean, it's
Hmm.
not slavery, but it's definitely a kind of peonage to get an education. My position
Limits,
is
yeah.
in the 21st century, if we want people to be competitive worldwide, not just United States wide, we have education to the 12th grade. It should be education to the 20th grade. It should be education to a master's degree. You need that level sometimes of education. It may be an apprenticeship, it may be a craft, trade, services, but you need that level of education to be competitive on a worldwide scale to make the United States, quote, the industry that is the envy of the world and not right now the joke of the world. So
Hmm.
I think the people who they say they're not going to vote, I understand that that is exactly what the opposition wants. The greatest way that you defeat an army is to demoralize them. You don't
Yep.
have to attack them. You demoralize them. They
Yep.
won't even fight.
Mm-hmm.
So when they come at black people, they come at people of color, they come at women, they come at people who've been exploited, people who've been abused, people who've been segregated, people who've been discriminated against this country, and say, hey, uh, Bernie wasn't treated right, so y'all should, dislike Biden. Well, Biden may not perfect, but Biden is hands and shoulders way above what the guy in Washington, D.C. now.
Yep.
So I think that you have to vote for your self-interest. You have to vote to protect yourself. You have to vote to protect your family. You have to vote for hopefully some common sense legislation so that you can get loans, so you can get jobs, so you can get housing, so you can get health care. This thing now, we have an epidemic. Well, this idiot down there in D.C., he cut down the center that was charged under Obama with totally surveying and staying on top of worldwide epidemics. He dismantled the whole group. Then he's saving money because they didn't have anything. Said he can hire people right back again. So thousands of people are going to die. Blood is on this man's hands because I don't know whether it's efficiency or incompetency, but either way, under his leadership, this country is vulnerable, and a lot of Americans will be dead by the end of this year, some by the end of this week, and maybe some by the end of this day, directly because of that man who's in office. So people can say they don't want to vote, but you're putting your life in danger by leaving incompetency, by leaving nepotism, by leaving ignorance, by leaving
Or being a
bigotry in
one
office.
issue voter, or they're just voting because of abortion laws or something
Right.
very small that it's like you won't live long enough to get to see that. Or not even voting for their own interest in the sense of getting a livable wage or being able to have health care for all and so many other things. We won't get into too much political stuff because we're supposed to be about entertainment. But I want to be very mindful of the time because it is 7 o'clock. And I just want to make sure, is there anything or any last thoughts you would like to share? And because I make
Well,
sure we covered
I've been
everything.
very fortunate. I mean, I didn't leave the country as I was originally when I was in the 60s, thinking about I was going to leave the country, go to Africa to make films. After working some time in Africa, I realized that it's just as bad or worse over there than it is over here. And also, the center of power is a lot more of Wall Street than it is in Lagos or Azerbaijan or Dar es Salaam or Tanzania. So I'm fortunate. I feel great about being alive and still have my wits about me at this point in my life. I tell people to wash their hands, stay safe, stay in the house, and stay together. And use this time, use this valuable time to work on the skills you want. There's just internet access. Unfortunately, everybody doesn't even have that. But those who do, you can get an invaluable amount of education between that. And there's an old thing called BOOK, books. Do not forget that is a wonderful app. BOOKS, books. Try that app. Turn it, open the
I
chapters,
mean,
open the books, pages, read, study, learn, get skills, and be competitive.
and there's a lot of libraries offering free online not virtual books, ebooks. So if you
Yes.
don't have to worry about going to the library or buying a book from Barnes and Noble or your local bookstore, there's other options. Just throwing that out there because I just found that out myself, that a lot of libraries are offering free books available and audiobooks as well in case
I
you need
think
them.
that people want us to be ignorant and
Mm-hmm.
people want us to fight each other. They do not want us united.
No.
There was a great slogan during the Occupy movement, we are the
Mm-hmm.
99%. And I think people should think about that. This one half of 1% that control more wealth, and these maybe 30 or 40 families that control more wealth than 75% of the world. So I'm not saying that we have an oligarchy. I think it's a lot worse than that because we have an oligarchy with propaganda arms that have influenced people. But we are fighting for our life. We are fighting for our future. We're fighting for our children's future. So use this time to get informed. And when you see odd places where people are always disruptive and causing chaos and confusion, question why they are there. Question what they are thinking about. Are they working for us or are they working for somebody else? Because unity is strength. Have a long vision. Okay, don't politician A or person B isn't 100%, but they're better than none. So then, and maybe next time it'll be you. You step up and you run yourself, or you participate yourself. You don't like what so and so wrote, write something better. You don't like what so and so acted, you act something better. You don't like what so and so wrote, you do it better. We're in entertainment. You can compete in these things. Make your own movies, make your own plays,
Or
make
your
your
own
own
TV
videos.
show.
Have your own streaming service. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Tune in next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm here every day. What are you talking about? I'm here
Okay.
every
Oh,
day
every
now.
day. Okay, every day. All
Like
right.
I just started Mondays with you because I was like, oh, I like as soon as you said yes, I was like, well, I'm gonna start doing
Oh, great.
Mondays.
That's good. Good for you.
Because I
Good
did
for you.
not want you to change your mind. I did not want to give up the opportunity to have my dad on and to share all your great stories because I do not do them justice because I know I'm saying them from the perspective of your child as opposed to hearing it straight from you. And you're you're always such a delight and so smart and just I'm just so lucky to have you in my life and I wanted to make sure other people knew your wisdom and their strength and everything that you've accomplished because so many people don't realize that there's opportunities out there and how they can go about them themselves and since you've not only done it but you've also been awarded for it because you got your Frank Capra Award in 2018, which I was lucky enough to see you win, and just you deserve all the awards because you've done so much, and I'm just so proud of you. And thank you so much for coming on my show with me today. You're the best.
Well, look, thank you for allowing me to, take up your time for that hour. Hope it's worthwhile and hope people will, let's stick together and we'll weather this storm and we'll be better. We'll be stronger when we come out of it. And hopefully we'll be more intelligent and more unified.
That part. Thanks again, Dad.
Okay,
I'll call you later.
all right.
All
Love you,
right.
dear.
Love
Take
you.
care. Bye
Love
bye.
you too. Bye. Isn't that awesome? I got him on. I was able to get shared. I mean, you guys just don't even understand how amazing and how much he has accomplished. This is an honor for me to have him part of my show. And thank you so much for watching and your great questions and all of the interaction from everyone. I want to make sure I say thank you and hello to everyone that was watching. Like Clay, thank you, Patrick, Demetrius, you, Jean, Michael, Anna, Rhonda, Michael again, Clay, thank you. Let me see, Richard, Demetrius. I said Michael already. Make sure I got everybody. Yeah. I feel like I'm getting everyone okay. I feel like I'm seeing a lot of duplicates, so I want to make sure I said everybody's name. Carly, thank you. Kara Barnes, Jackie, Micaiah, of course, Mimi. Thank you for sharing that story about my dad. And that's where I met you as well, was on Hustle and Flow, because I got the wonderful opportunity of working on that as well. And make sure everybody's in. Yeah, great. All right. Thanks again for tuning in. And I'll be back again tomorrow. I am completely blanking on who I'm having tomorrow, but I'm sure it is listed. Oh, I know. I'm having Amber. I'm having Amber from Racing Wives. Amber Balkan and her fiance will also be on tomorrow. And I'm going to do a special edition with my Uncle Stuart. He's going to share a little bit about insurance. We're going to do that probably about 4 o'clock. Since so many people were affected by the tornadoes in this area, I think it'll be a great opportunity to have that chance to talk to someone and find out what you can do, what's covered, how you need to reach out to your insurance company and so on. And I'm so proud of everyone for tuning in and thank you for watching. See you guys tomorrow, the E-Spot with Camille, every Monday through Friday now, starting at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific. Please share, like, subscribe, and let your friends know where to go at the E-Spot. Bye.